So whatever.
Okay.
So so I guess is that maybe some place that we start? What are everybody's thoughts of Pete really thinking about this run for Congress, and how do you you know how do you think about that in kind of comparison to, and maybe I'm putting my slant on it, but I feel like a lot of us are frustrated with the system and frustrated with the need of money that's going to be um, needed to raise in here. And if I know Pete through listening to him, I feel like that's going to be something that's going to really, really work on his psyche of just all this fundraising and all the bullshit that'll go into a run for Congress versus, if he's that change that change agent he's talking about. How do we kind of marry that to, I feel like we have two different kind of worlds or vibes maybe emerging here. Anybody kind of understand what I mean?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, me too.
That's where you got
Yeah.
to take a page out of OAC's book, I think.
I could offer some insight here.
Sure do.
My sister-in-law was the first person that was running for the Michigan U.S. House District 8 seat, U.S. Congress, that Alyssa Slotkin won. My sister-in-law would have made a fantastic congresswoman. It would have just been kick-ass. But politics is at the root of how that whole system works. So you can be disgusted with it and want to change it, but you still got to work with it. I mean, the party wanted to run Ms. Slotkin largely because of name recognition, having worked in the Obama administration, and that came with a ton of money from the party. And so there was literally no way my sister-in-law could have had a chance to make a run. But I mean, I think the district was already beginning to lean Democratic, even though it was a fairly heavily Republican district. But I would be happy to connect Pete with her if he wants that connection. I'm sure she would love to talk to him and tell him her experience. She's still working with the party on a unity committee kind of a role, so it certainly infected her in that sense. But man, the way the party works is extremely real, and you have to respect it. Even though you can hate every minute of it, you got to respect it to be able to to have your voice heard. So. Yeah, ultimately, my sister-in-law said the amount of money that I would have to have raised and the time it would take to raise the money was just not where her heart was. But it had to be raised.
That is the problem.
Yeah.
That's like the root of all the problems, I think.
And it's by design, in my opinion.
And what?
And it's by design. It's meant to be a class barrier to entry to or time barrier or whatever. But I would say that I'm all for whatever's going to impact and help save the planet. I guess if it's looking at what just all the cards on the table or all of the assets that we have here, Pete produces content, and Pete produces a platform in which we can come together and learn. And so if Pete wants to go run for office, my natural inclination is to say, all right, well, let's not necessarily run just Pete for office, but let's run like what stand up is, and so that more than one person can also utilize that platform to run for office in their spot. And we're kind of pushing more of a movement than just a single person into a single spot. He can certainly be the tip of the spear and be the show pony of the whole sort of thing, but to catalyze that into a
run him as a new system.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what do y'all think about the possibility if, let's say, Elizabeth Warren is our new president, and her talk about the change in the way people can be elected, much more like how it is in Europe. You know, you can't be spending our tax dollars and have the advertisement.
Mm-hmm.
I know you all know what I'm talking about, so I'm not going to continue on with it. But I think that's something that's very well needed here now.
It is needed. And I don't know if one of you guys was the one that posted the idea of him running and also sharing the process of running in a podcast. Did you guys see that?
Yeah, I saw that. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I read that. That's great too. Yes.
I would also concur that that's because that goes back to Pete's original, the original concept here is that it's knowledge sharing, and we're essentially, if I'm not overstating it, what we're trying to do is community organize in a way here. Maybe we're spread across the country and whatever, but our concept is centered around, like, we know we need to get the populace educated and conversing and opening ourselves up to our existing conclusions and prejudices and all these sort of things that Pete has done for us. We know that we have, a dozen years left on the clock as far as climate change is concerned to really make effective change. We know that this sort of content and this sort of delivery system of SiriusXM or podcasting or audio learning works for folks like us.
Yeah, I live in an area where the concept of climate change is laughed upon. And I'm an environmental inspector myself, so that disgusts me. So, it can be very frustrating.
Wow.
Did everybody get a chance to see the email that Pete passed along this morning?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, just even starting at the top of that, basically, I think, and as far as content's concerned, we're just this daily podcast most similar to Stand Up. I think that's an easy sort of thing. I think we can, here, I can share my screen here. He had mentioned some folks here. Hey, Cornell.
Cornell. Tom, are you showing something on the screen that I might not be able to see because I'm in chat mode?
Maybe.
How do I get out of it?
I'm just showing his email right now.
Yeah, right.
I don't know how to.
So I think he's putting this stuff out here to kind of obviously, number one with this daily podcast of like being close to Stand Up. Duh, I think that's something that I would like tomorrow.
Yeah, me too.
The first hour of that is my cup of coffee in the morning.
Yeah.
And then so then this working title of Earthbeat with Pete Dominick. And I think this is where we can really start talking about how his platform and this show kind of turns into activism. But if we can think about the classroom, and that's just a working holding title or whatever, but as the center hub for if it launches him upwards or people upwards into government and into running for office, great, it's coming from that central hub. But also that central hub pushes into our local communities with these ideas, like how do we each go and be boots on the ground of removing single-use plastics out of wherever, or how do we go and implement and talk about the things that Pete's talking about in this Earthbeat segment, and really trying to build our own solution to the problem while also taking a multifaceted approach of running for office.
So this is basically an offshoot of Stand Up with the added benefit of having it actually do something. And it teaches us and also helps us share what we're learning and do something with it.
my frustration with SiriusXM was that, and talking to some of the hosts there, is that they have no idea really who their audience is beyond building up a Facebook group or something like that. And maybe that's well and good for the Covino and Riches of the world, but when you're getting your rug pulled out underneath you, like so many people, like Danielle Moody Mills has, and so you see these people start to scramble to try to keep their audiences together. But so that's one thing, but then on the other side of it is, like you said, Therese, really truly like utilizing the content that we're all sharing and enjoying in the morning and all these other things to be the start of our day of actual participation in the world of, right, exactly.
To be the change we want to see.
Right, it's all kind of the stuff that I think we already know in our gut.
Yeah.
Hey, this is Cornell. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Hey, something that I'm really struck by is how people are really focused on education and they want to know more. Such as why we're all here together and why so many people listen to Pete's show. But then they're like, okay, I'm learning a lot, but what do I do? And I really feel like if we can, whatever we do moving forward, what Pete does moving forward, if there can be some kind of way that along with whatever issue or issues that he wants to focus on or we want to focus on, we have some action part go along. Maybe it happens over 2 or 3 weeks. Maybe it's maybe something like environmental justice and organizing, or single-use plastics and something like registering people or registering the petition. Have some kind of issue go along with action so that people not just find out about things and about issues, but also are maybe getting that missing element of how to actually move forward and take action either in their local town, or like I think Ben has brought up, running for office, whatever it is, because we can't just it can't just be just action, because if people aren't educated, then they're going to do really stupid things. It can't just be education, because we've got a lot of information out there, but if we just have a bunch of people who know a lot of things but don't do anything, that won't work either. So there's got to be a combination. And maybe it is that people kind of get to choose. Okay, are you just going to maybe participate as far as education? Are you going to be just action? Or are you going to be somebody that engages in both ways? Because there are some people who just, for whatever reason, whatever circumstances, are not able to maybe get out and do action, or maybe are just about action. But I think if we can have ways for people to get engaged with either or both, I think that will really make this one very different than pretty much what's going on anywhere else that I hear, and make a real difference.
Yes, absolutely, I agree.
I totally agree with that, Cornell, and I think that's exactly what I was hoping to hear you all kind of be about today. So with that in mind, the classroom, I feel like we've got this initiative. We've got the intelligent people in the room. My heart goes out to, and maybe this is where I'm just talking about like owning a dot, or where I'm at. I'm married, I have 2 kids at home and a third on the way, and so my action time right now is a little limited, but I'm impassioned to help educate, and I envision and would like to have a area to where people that are trying to unplug from the matrix, quote unquote, have a little bit easier, a 101 classroom to be in, where there is no stupid questions, or where there is, like, we are going over civics, and it is an education process to kick people up to Pete's show or to the other shows and to the activism, So I feel like there's a direction to go in that way, where it is, we have all these podcasts out there and all these niche, as deep as you could possibly get in any content, but like, where is the Civics for Dummies live call show
Good.
sort of thing?
That's a really good question.
Civics for dummies.
But basically, right?
Yes, absolutely.
But I feel like there's something that's missing from a podcast where you're just talking into a mic and distributing it versus that live call in. Like one of the favorite things I have from the show is all y'all that call in and talk and discuss it. And the amount of knowledge I've gotten from Bill B and DC on stuff is crazy. So like,
Yeah.
I'm keen to keep that element alive, and obviously a lot of these shows that he's got.
Yeah, I think that's crucial. The audience is what Pete created, and it's that's always been my favorite part of the show. I myself listened for 12 years, and I never called in. I don't know why.
This is the only show that I've ever called into because it made it feel unthreatening, There are no questions. You don't feel like an idiot.
Yeah, I think the reason I never did is because as soon as I had a thought, some other person would call in and be like, yeah, that's exactly what I was going to. So I just listen.
Or so many times somebody says it and it's what you want to say, but they say it so smart and elegantly.
Exactly.
You're like,
exactly.
oh, I wanted to say that.
Cornell.
Yeah.
So how do we? I mean, it sounds like we're trying to figure out how either to add the call in kind of exchange aspect that comes with a live in show. So maybe either having a live call in show or creating a podcast that has a connected engagement piece. I mean, and maybe that is like if Pete decides to go with the podcast, maybe we really do work more with, say, the classroom to have that be that piece. Because I think it really could, if we did a podcast and really focus on having the classroom be not just necessarily a kind of exchange of what we thought about the show, like it was, kind of initially, but more like, hey, this is the issue that was discussed in the podcast. These are some people who are doing, amazing things. Maybe where you are, what other things are happening? And what other resources are there out there to take action on this issue or to find out more about this issue? So, I mean, I think there are kind of two ways to go. One way is obviously a bit more work with the podcast and then making the classroom, a kind of engagement piece of the podcast, or just obviously having, a live call-in show, and then the classroom still being the kind of, maybe engagement activist or action arm of that call-in show. But I certainly see a place for the classroom to be at least that platform, that kind of launch pad for, local or regional action and information, and bringing people together to actually do something with the information or the engagement that may happen on a podcast or a live call-in show.
Is there such a thing as both? Is there such a thing as a podcast where people call in? Like, I know it can't be like live at a point.
It is just tricky. It's like you need to have the tool that. So essentially, one of the reasons I wanted to do the Skype meeting today is because this is a potential way that I've figured out in my head is how you could do it. Like we're doing it right now. And then.
And to know when he was recording the podcast.
Right, but if it's every morning from, if we're doing this every morning, or if it's at this time, and then you record it and then you distribute it later in the day, but then the Twitter profile can send out a message, that we're live, and the Facebook post can go out that it's live, and people can call into the whatever, and
Yeah.
it's all right here inside of this. You could even then do the screen sharing and if you're wanting to do a little bit of a, Civics 101 lesson, you can do the screen sharing and do a PowerPoint or do something and have that be part of the content package.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you all have rattled my brain, and I'm just going to be stupid for a second, but as we have progressed in our technology on how to get our information, it's gone from reading a newspaper or reading a letter from somebody all the way up to now. Is there something out there that's even a higher tech, faster tech that younger people would engage in easier? Because I think that would be a good thing to be able to tap into the young people out there.
Yeah, I think that's YouTube.
Like a live YouTube situation.
Yep. And it's starting on, kind of good principle foundation like this, but then, it's just a YouTube stream or something along those lines.
That's
Okay,
interesting.
then let's get Pete on that.
Yeah, exactly. No, and it's true because then, but then like the operation that goes like if Pete has somebody, and I haven't even talked to him about like, what's happening with Chris and stuff, but like Chris did all this stuff on the fly that made it look so easy, but he was clipping out things and putting them out into the ether so that they would get picked up and potentially go viral, or, those sort of things. And so as we're thinking about how we're going to get Pete out there on YouTube or how we're going to help grow the movement, be kind of thinking about, what skill sets we might have that can do that, or what interests we might have, or how, kind of, I'm making lists in my head of the downstream stuff that I guess I was assuming that Hasselt was doing all the,
He's still employed by Sirius, from what I understand.
Yeah, I'm pretty certain. I think both Chris and
Yeah.
Hannah are still employed by Sirius. He's not sure what show or shows they'll end up moving to, but yeah, I think they're still going to be working with Sirius in some kind of capacity somewhere.
Well, Chris is like a laser beam, just like da 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 da.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's one of the wittiest people I've ever heard.
if not the,
Yeah, that's very impressive.
So I thought scrolling through my mind, this Dale, I read a great book a couple of years ago. I forget the author now, but it's called Healing the Heart of Democracy. And one of the things that it ultimately got to was we have to have more public spaces where we can have dialogue with people that we don't necessarily agree with. My guess is even Pete's show was a little bit of an echo chamber. Sometimes people would call in that would absolutely disagree, but by and large, people called in who agreed. So it feels like we gotta take our inspiration from the show and we gotta then take it publicly. And the thing I've been experimenting with is coffee shops. So I started a little progressive group. We kind of meet in a coffee shop, and there's a table of, I'm sure they're conservatives. They're sitting right next to us, And it's like the real challenge is to be able to merge with that table and have discussions, right? That's what it's all about. It isn't just, you got to get out of our echo chambers. So I'm thinking maybe there's a way, in addition to the content and being able to get the inspiration from these podcasts, there's a way to sort of get talking points that you can take to a discussion, or even maybe a little snippet you can take to that conservative table and say, here, listen to this. It only takes 60 seconds. Now let's talk about it. So you get your inspiration from the show, but then you got to go out and do something with it.
Is everybody able to see the
They
screen?
had that. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Hal.
They had that thing in Kansas, was it, where they brought all those groups of people together, and they asked them all the questions, and there was, from one spectrum to the other, the people were, from conservative to liberal, and they would ask them all these questions, and they had to work through it. And for the life of me, I cannot think of what it was, but it got pretty big write-up even recently, where they just all had to be in a room and discuss all these topics, and they kind of started understanding each other and agreeing that, they weren't the enemy of each other.
The real funny thing is that's what our founding fathers originally did when we set up Congress.
Yes, they fought for hours.
Yeah. They dueled.
It's called civil discourse in our
Civil
country.
discourse. You respect the people that you hate. Exactly.
Yes.
They did shoot at each other though at some point in time.
Did they really?
Well, yeah, Alexander Hamilton and
Yeah.
Barr or
Aaron
whatever.
Aaron Burr.
Aaron Burr. So, in answer to this question, I have this concept of the dot and owning your dot and where is your dot and how do we engage people that don't necessarily see the world like we do, right? And so if this was in the classroom and we're talking and we're having a conversation and somebody calls in or whatever, or Cornell and I are talking, hey Cornell, how's it going
Yeah.
today? Where's your dot? And Cornell can say to me, hey man, I'm a -5. And that's referencing this litmus test that we have happened to choose. Maybe it's this one, maybe it's another one. But you can go through here and we can have everybody involved with our show go and ask themselves these questions. And it turns out an ideological, here I'm trying to find it here on,
I feel like I've done this before.
what's that?
I feel like I've seen this before.
Correct.
Yeah. Did you post this on the classroom once before?
I think I have, yes.
Yeah. I was
Oh yeah.
very far
Well, we're here.
to the left.
What's that quadrant? I believe I was. Or wherever the far leftist was.
Why can't I find
Because you're looking for it.
yeah, right? Damn it.
Because you're guy, you're looking for it.
There, okay,
There
whatever.
you go.
Okay. So whatever this, yeah. So we can, as we go from this platitudes of we want to do activism and we want to be better neighbors and we want to do all these sort of things to, well, how do we actually have those coffee shop conversations? I see being able to put some sort of agreed upon litmus test or mechanism in place to get a sense of the playing field that we're on. And put, it's okay if you're totally in one corner and I'm totally in the other one, but at least we are back to agreeing that there's 4 colors and they're purple, red, green, and blue.
Yeah.
And now we can work, and now we can talk. And if I'm now thinking about our world and left to right and up and down, authoritarian and libertarian, all of a sudden this person over here and me over here, we agree still about being anti-authoritarian. And we can talk about, and now that's going to get us out of, well, Hitler and the Nazis are just the same as these people conversations, and it's going to get into, and so I feel like that is a mechanism to help jog us loose from what we're frustrated by.
Yeah.
Well, I live here in Houston, Texas, and my ideology is far from what is the majority here, being raised in San Francisco during the hippie era. But I worked in the construction field here, and it's pretty single-minded, conservative focus that a lot of these people have. And there was other people that started engaging in conversations, and it would ruffle their feathers, so to speak, right? But I saw right there in front of me how if you didn't purposely push their buttons and do the punching down and the name calling and all that stuff, you just had actual concern for them, saying, well, why do you think this? Or do you think that doing this will help yourself and your family and your children and your neighbors? And that kind of always kind of opened up their head to go, oh yeah, okay. I have been kind of singular minded in my conservative ways. And so many of these people that are, i.e. conservative here, are not the true conservatives that I was raised to know.
No, it's a whole new thing. My brother is a Trumper, I guess, and I've learned you got to walk softly when trying to talk to him about anything that could veer into that territory. But I have learned that a lot of the times we will agree on things, even though he's this Alex Jones loving conservative. You can find a common ground, and it just takes what you just said. You don't want to push their buttons.
Takes a lot of intestinal fortitude on my part.
Yeah, me too.
Me three.
Hey, y'all, something that we need to also consider is, as much as I am for bringing people together, and I really am, there are some people who actually don't want to come together and want to have their point of view, want to have their opinion, want that to be okay, want to shut down other opinions. And I think we need to also just consider how, in a way, we self-select. I don't think we need to be self-selecting by political opinion, but I think we do need to be, our platform does need to have an aspect of self-selecting as far as either temperament or as far as goals. Because hey, if you're a passionate Republican, that's fine. If you're a passionate Republican who wants to shut down all opinions other than your own, that's not fine. If you're if you're a passionate, progressive, passion, that's fine. What's not fine is when you are, really shutting down other things, and that's why I say we need to just consider that.
I agree.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I think that's awesome. Especially, like case in point, in times in the show where, Pete, I think, allows pretty open dialogue, but has just flat out shut down people trying to, operate in conspiracy theory and such, and
Yes.
so like that. But then obviously, so a paradox of intolerance here, Cornell.
Yeah, I mean, well, definitely that, and just recognizing like, hey, it's fine if you want to be somebody who is absolutely set in your opinion, do not want to hear anything else. That's cool. Go do what you do. You just can't do that here.
Right.
And not demonizing anybody, but saying, hey, we're here for a particular purpose. That is to bring people together to make things better and to learn more. If that's not what you're here for, you need to find something else to do, and to be staunch in that opinion. To recognize and let people know, hey, this is not where you bring silliness. This is where you bring real questions, real debate, real concern, and real listening. And if you can't do those things, this isn't for you.
Amen.
Yep.
Yes. Couldn't agree more.
Who wants to follow that?
I'm measuring, sorry.
Are there other things that we need to discuss that we haven't at the moment, or do you think this gives us kind of a good thing to start to chew on, or what? We're still kind of improvising here today.
Hey, I don't know if I typed a little note earlier. I don't know if the conversation, if people have got to see my text or whatever. Something that we need to that an issue that comes up when it comes to trying to poll, because I like the idea of like people being able to say, hey, here's where I'm at any given day, so then we can know and engage in them kind of where we're coming from. The issue you have with that is the same issue that polling operations have, and that is that nobody wants to be seen as being too extreme. So even if, it's the same reason that, I live in Austin, Texas, and there's a huge quote unquote independent, contingency here in Texas, which is bullshit. It's very conservative, and it's just that those conservatives don't want to be seen as too mean. So they call themselves independent, and they don't really express how they feel. So then people get a false narrative of really how big the independent population is here. So I feel like that is something we need to consider in something like this kind of, instant polling or instant kind of identification process is that we're likely going to get a lot of people putting themselves in the middle because they don't want to truly express any kind of opinions or preferences they have that could be seen as undesirable or too extreme.
You're absolutely right.
Do you think those things will kind of shake out, though? Like as we get going or into conversation, it's obviously our people that we're discussing with we're not going to be dealing with hundreds of thousands of people to start. So the bad actors,
Well, here's what I'd say. I'd say, there's nothing wrong with trying it and seeing how it works. And I think we just need to prepare for there to be a possibility that we will find a bunch of people smack dab in the middle generally. And I think after a while, we'll see whether or not we're actually really able to get as much use out of this as we hope to. So I'm not necessarily saying we shouldn't do it.
Cool. Yeah, no,
I'm just offering something to consider.
Something happened here.
No, nothing happened.
Oh, okay.
Part of that sales training, Therese, is to let the air sit for a while and give somebody maybe a beat to speak up. Any other thoughts from the group here today?
I definitely think we should continue the dialogue.
Yes, I agree. I want to, obviously rally around Pete, not get in his way, but then be, still that change or what we want to see or do here. And I feel like we've got a complementary angle to go at and support him and to do all sorts of things, but then to kind of give a foundation of what we want to see in our own right off of that content of his and others.
I really like your idea of YouTube.
I was just going to say that.
Oh,
I think
go ahead.
I think YouTube is a good vessel for this. It speaks to the younger audience. It's easy to use and interactive.
And
Yeah.
to reach a wide audience.
Yep.
And I think that something that has to be thrown in that YouTube thing is a disclaimer or something saying this is not a hypnosis to train all you to be left-wing lemmings, because that the Rush Limbaughs and all that will get a hold of it saying, oh, it's just propaganda that they're trying to preach to our kids. They tried it in the colleges with the liberal teachers and blah, blah, blah. And Pete has touched upon that with some of his programs where he stresses the point of educating yourself and getting the facts and relearning. So
Right.
That's my 2 cents.
And just to put a point on that, I took a research methodology class in college, and was privileged enough to do that. And that was one of the greatest things that has ever happened for me because it showed me how to look at research and look at data and be able to cipher through that. And then as I learned about the world, I realized not a lot of people got that experience, and so how do we help? My heart is always going to come back to helping go back for, quote unquote, go back for others, if that's a way to do it or whatever, but to help show the light or unplug people from the matrix or whatever it is and get people listening to Pete so that they can go blossom in their ways that I have,
And that's where and also the civics piece is, pretty neutral, right? It's not left or right, it's civics.
Right, and it's not the great courses in a college level class either. It's still could have dick jokes or whatever if it needed to, but
Yeah.
it's approachable. It's still this same vibe that we have here. It's not something that's already existing out there.
Yep.
energized. I'm going to go work out.
Yeah, this was good. We don't need to kind of berate the issue here, so I'll take this. I'll share it with Pete, and then we can get together later this week or next week sometime and kind of reconvene. But I don't want to waste your time with these. But please send your ideas or thoughts or whatever.
You'll send out another notice when we are to reconvene, if I'm in.
That sounds wonderful.
Yeah, thanks so much for putting this together.
Yeah, been
No
great.
problem, guys. All right.
Thank you.
Have a great
Y'all
day.
have a
Love you all.
blessed day.
All right.
All right. Talk
Bye
to you
now.
guys later.
Everybody be good.